Hi everybody, Dacob here. Welcome back to the Fragrant Bunker. Today we're going to be reviewing something special. Number 1 Intense by Patricia de Nicolai. Oh boy, oh golly boy. Golly me. This is exciting. Subscribe to my channel first before we get to it. Push there's no join button on Essentially Dacob. You can join me on Patreon, Super Dacob all spelled together there for extra perks. You can join me on my main Super Dacob channel. That membership helps out a lot, the Perfume channel as well. Thank you to my members and patrons who have already pledged. I also live stream every Saturday on my main Super Dacob channel where you're all invited to join the chats. That's where I also film my perfume reviews. So you get to see those there as well. Let's cue into chats while we're at it. Hi everybody, 'tis the season. It's late August as I'm filming this and Halloween season has begun. So I would also like to remind you of my new merch. The Halloween merch is here, the Journey merch, the Day Cult merch, Louis the Pumpkin merch is also available. Not the actual pumpkin, but printed on t-shirts. And what was the other one? Oh, the FOMO merch. It's like, what was it? Check it out on www.superdacob.com. This thing is amazing. Let's get to it. I'm going to spritz away and then we're going to go on a journey. Not just the merch journey, but the fragrant journey. Oh my gosh. Hit it. Hit me like a bulldozer. Oh my gosh. Patricia, what do you do to us? I just want to say that this thing is amazing. Review over, buy it, done. No, seriously though. I mean, but it's just that good. Now, a dear supporter and friend to the Fashion Bunker, Vel, you should go check her out on Instagram. Aldehyde Overdose is her tag on Instagram. Vel gifted me this fragrance, by the way. So, Vel, thank you so much for gifting me this perfume. This thing is insane. Let's get to the details, and you're gonna see why this thing is so insane. I have the 100 ml. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, so first of all, it came out in the 80s. This is one of those 80s perfumes that, had I known it earlier, it would have landed in my top 10 80s fragrances. For sure. For sure, but better late than never. Better late than never. It came out in 1988. Val told me that apparently Patricia de Nicolai, she was in the running to create Trésor by Lancôme, and this was one of the formulas that she suggested for it. It did not win. Another Formula One. Number 1 was not available in the Intense formulation in the 80s. She reformulated it for the Intense formulation that we know today, but number 1 was her first. That's why it's called number 1. It was the first one that she created. And since, Lancôme didn't take it, she kept it for herself. Tweaked it a little bit, I suppose, and created this masterpiece. Let's get to the notes. Top notes: sweet acacia, absolute, bergamot essence, galbanum essence. Middle notes: tuberose absolute, jasmine absolute, ilang ilang essence, orange flower essence, iris butter, rose absolute, and rose essence. Base notes: sandalwood essence, oak moss, and musk. I'm reading from Nicolai's own website. They also state that number 1 Intense contains 87.5% of natural ingredients. They also state on their website that number 1 Intense is perfectly adapted to the atmosphere of its creation at the end of the 80s, a generous bouquet of white flowers, tuberose top notes on a bed of sandalwood, and animal base notes that bestow an exceptional diffusion. For this perfume in 1988, Patricia de Nicolai received an international prize for the best perfume maker, a prestigious professional distinction. Patricia de Nicolai is niece to the empire of the Guerlains. Yes, the House of Guerlain. She's very talented. She owns her own brand together with her husband, which they founded right around in the late 80s. You might ask yourself, why didn't Guerlain hire her? And after all the Guerlain men retired, why wouldn't they hire a woman from the same family to become the artistic director of Guerlain? They had the opportunity. They coulda, woulda, shoulda, but no. They opted for a man, not part of the family. They preferred to hire Thierry Vassa instead. Now, by that time, when Thierry Vassa was appointed the position at Guerlain, Patricia de Nicolai already had her brand. It's not like she was struggling or suffering because she founded her brand already in the 80s. But kind of leaves a bitter taste in your mouth thinking, well, what was the issue? Because she wasn't the firstborn, because she wasn't a boy, she wasn't a man, she was, a niece, she wasn't the daughter, she was like too far off from the center of the family. Well, then she's still closer than Thierry Vassa is to the family. She studied real hard, chemistry. She has an education in chemistry, and that education is going to come in very handy when we dissect the tuberose in this fragrance. But when it comes to Patricia de Nicolai, there's a little bit more information here that perchance we should share. On her own website, she states, a family saga, perfume in the blood. And I'm reading directly from the Nicolai website. They say, with the opening of Nicolai Parfumeur Créateur in 1989, Patricia de Nicolai and her husband Jean-Louis Michaud took an audacious gamble by creating, signing, and selling her own perfumes. The era of the auteur in the perfume business hadn't yet arrived, and being a nose, professional perfumer, was primarily a man's role. Interesting how she decides to write all of that on her website, right? It's all telling. It's also the things we have to read between the lines sometimes. Everything I say in this video is obviously just for entertainment purposes only, just my opinion, not rooted in truths or facts. Everything's alleged. From the beginning, the House of Nicolai has taken devotion to top quality and complete creative freedom as its credo, maintaining a distinguished elegance that never bows to the diktats of marketing. This was the philosophy of the Guerlain family, from which Patricia is a descendant on her mother's side. She is the great-granddaughter of Pierre Guerlain, who, with his brother Jacques as chief perfume designer, propelled their company to success in the first part of the 20th century. Over the years, such rigor has captured an audience hungering for beautiful creations. Today, Nicolai Parfumeur Créateur is one of the jewels of the independent French perfume industry, whose products are exported around the world. Patricia is now assisted in her creative work by her son, Axel de Nicolai, who is also the enterprise's Director General for Development. For the Nicolai family values both passion and tradition. They also talk about outstanding quality selected by a resident perfumer. It may seem obvious, but it totally makes the difference. Also, Nicolai states on their website, Nicolai integrates the entire process between creation and fabrication, from the purchase of raw materials to sales in its shops. For both Patricia and Axel, it all begins with the raw materials, as well as the most innovative synthetics they choose from among the best sources and producers of natural ingredients, ignoring the constraints of costs, throwing shade at the mass-released industry. Thus, Patricia's creative palette includes Indonesian patchouli, Cambodian oud, and essence of Turkish rose, unique ingredients that tingle on the skin and provide a pleasant surprise even hours later. For that, too, is a Nicolai hallmark. And let me tell you something, they could not be more honest about this. The surprise in these fragrances, even hours later, magical. I have not seen it in other perfumes. We're going to get to it. A typical day at Nicolai, they say, every morning Patricia and her team work on creating new scents while staying in close touch with the market in order to anticipate the public's tastes. Meanwhile, Axel closely evaluates Patricia's fragrance explorations with no holding back. In addition to her creative work, Patricia supervises production from monitoring the weight of ingredients to conformance with rigorous legislative standards, EU, national, and also those of the many countries where Nicolai is marketed. It is this unceasing attention to detail that makes her the guarantor of the finished product. Patricia was born in 1957. This fragrance opens up with some sort of blast of aldehydes and something that I would say resembles a lily of the valley, even though not listed in the notes. However, that acacia might be similar. There's a certain tingliness to it, but what strikes me the most is the tuberose. You know how much I love my white florals. And I adore my white florals. Love them to bits. By the way, this video is not sponsored at all. This is just the love I have for this perfume is beyond. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the plant of the tuberose. Okay. Usually, now depending where you are, in which part of the world you are, in some parts of the world tuberoses grow. They like a relatively mild, warm climate. Let's just say you're not going to find a tuberose growing on the top of a mountain. Mediterranean. They love their Mediterranean, you know. Tuberose also grows in France, certain parts of France. If you were to spend a night in a 2-story house on the Mediterranean or close to the fields of Grasse, there's also the Grasse tuberose, and you sleep with an open window, there's a nice gentle breeze coming in from outside, and you're just about to fall asleep, but all of a sudden there's a little teeny tiny prick of a scent. It pricks your senses. You smell a faint, subtle, lingering, prickly smell. And you kind of wake up and you try to figure, where is it? I don't have a flower in the room. Is there a vase with flowers somewhere? No. Try to go back to sleep. It wakes you up again because it's very gentle but persistent. It slithers constantly and it wakes up the senses. If you've ever experienced that, most luckily, you've encountered the scent of the tuberose in the middle of the night, a night-blooming flower, which, as you know, some of you might know, has been forbidden to be smelled by young virgin girls in the courts of Versailles because it has been deemed that that smell would de-virginize you. It is so intoxicating and sensual and sexual that just by smelling it alone, you would lose your virginity. Young girls were kept at bay from tuberose flowers. They were not allowed to smell them. Well, we know why. There's this idea of a lingering, constant trace that wakes up the senses. It's not overpowering, but it craves an itch. Well, it's an itch that craves a scratch, actually. It's just that in the case of the tuberose, you don't quite know where to scratch it, and it all kind of ends up being a very sexual thing. But if you're going to limit it just to the flower, the structure of this flower is very fascinating, because if you come really close to the plant itself, to the blooming flower, and you sniff it up close, it doesn't really smell. Sure it does, but it doesn't really smell. No, it doesn't. The tuberose has specialized itself for doing exactly what I described before. Because when you're sleeping on that second floor with the open window and that smell slithers through because it came from the garden, slithered up the walls, came into your second floor and came into your nostrils, well, something happens. And what happens is the tuberose has developed this very particular chemical characteristic where the smell becomes stronger the more it goes away from the plant. And it does that in order to captivate whatever insects it needs to captivate in order for them to fly close to the tuberose, which blooms at night, to impollinate it. And they need to find it also in the dark. They need to follow that trail, that smell, to the flower. And it slithers for miles and miles surrounding the plant. And you might not even know where the tuberose is. You're just smelling it like crazy. It drives you crazy. You want to know where it's coming from. Why am I stressing so much about this? Because that's exactly how Patricia managed to deliver the tuberose in this perfume. Such a savvy chemist. She knows how the tuberose behaves. She knew how to replicate it in perfume form. And what do we get when we spray number 1? The first time I sprayed it was the day I went to try it on with Vel. And she gifted me the bottle, and I sprayed also from the tester, on my skin. And I sprayed other perfumes as well that day. And I was like trying out several ones, right? So I went home a couple of hours later. I'm sitting watching something on TV, chill. And the most faint, sickly sweet, tantalizing, erotic, alluring, inviting smell tickles my nose and is gone. And I go, like, what is this? And I'm like, okay, well, I sprayed like 4 perfumes, like one here, one here, one here, one here in the perfumery. So I go through them, smell one, smell the other, smell one, no, that's not it. Smell the second, no, that's not it. Smell number 1, no, that's not it. Smell the 4th, no, that's not it. And I go, well, it's none of my perfumes. It must be in this new house I'm in. I mean, maybe it's coming from somewhere. But there was no garden. So I sit again. I keep watching. 10 minutes later, it pricks me again. It tickles my nose just for a second. The most delicious, alluring smell. And right as I'm like inhaling it fully, it's gone again. And I'm trying to capture it in my nose. Like I open my nostrils, like really like, where is it? And I dig myself into my skin again. Nothing. It's not there. It's not there. Not there. I sit, at this point, I'm getting really nervous because I'm the type of person, I have a very sensitive nose. I need to know where a smell is coming from. If I don't know where it's coming from, it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. I need to know, and then I can work with it. Nothing. That entire evening, for at least 3 hours, I was at my wit's end. I didn't know. So I gave up. I had a sneaky suspicion it could have been number 1 Intense because of the 4 perfumes I tried that day, that was the only one with tuberose. And this was a very particular type of smell of tuberose that was tickling me from time to time, every couple of minutes. But I couldn't be certain because when I would smell the spot where I sprayed number 1 up close you don't smell the tuberose. I couldn't. So the next day, I washed up, took a shower, made sure to scrub everything really off because I had an idea. Let me, without any other fragrance on my body, let me just open up the gift that I was gifted and let me spray the perfume and see if somehow something happens with this, if it really is this perfume. I have my suspicions, but I can't prove it because I did have other perfumes on my skin the day before, so you never know. I thought to myself, maybe 2 or 3 of these perfumes blending together in the air create this masterful effect, which kind of made me sad. I thought, well, if this is the case, I'm going to have to buy all 3 of them, and I'm going to have to dose them the same way again, which is going to be impossible to manage to dose them the same way at the same distance to create this effect again. So I was a little bit sad. I thought to myself, well, if this is the case, darn, darn. So I just sprayed in one spot, number 1 Intense. And it's intense. The opening is very aldehydic. It's a bit screechy. It takes a moment. It's an 80s powerhouse in many ways. Like don't judge this perfume by its opening because the opening does not do this perfume justice. The opening is bombastic. It's heavy. It's not like your favorite thing. But that's always a good sign because if a perfume isn't really that pleasant in the opening, you know it's going to be relatively good in the dry down because that means that there's so much more that this perfume has to give. It just has to mellow down a little bit, has to settle in before it starts giving. So anyway, I spray it and I'm like, woof, cha. It's intense. And I'm like, no, I don't smell it. I don't smell that delicious, tickly, zesty moment that slithers and is gone sooner than it appeared, you know? It wasn't there. 2 hours in to the perfume, it's there. 2 hours after I applied it, more or less. I get that tickly moment and I'm like, oh, there it is. There it is. The purest tuberose. I didn't say purest tuberose the day prior because I did have other 3 perfumes on me. They were a bit mixing up. But now that I only had number 1 Intense on, more or less 2 hours pass, and that little surprise slithering tuberose moment happens, and I immediately dig my nose into my hand where I sprayed. I'm like, no, it's not there. Oh my God. Then it hit me. Oh my God. Patricia managed to mimic the behavioral pattern of a tuberose to a T. To a T. Magical. To say magical is an understatement. I mean, it's close to a miracle, really, because the way this fragrance behaves is majestic. Like, you need technique to create something like this with this balance and the sandalwood in the base and then the rose and the ylang ylang, the iris butter and the ylang ylang create this bed on which the tuberose just keeps blooming and blooming and it goes for hours and hours and it keeps surprising you. But never when you come close. Always with a very, very respectful distance. And when you keep your distance, it will deliver magic for hours and hours on end. It's amazing. It has shoulder pads, though. It is an 80s powerhouse. Number 1 Intense. Interesting, though, Nicolai lists on their website oak moss in the dry down. However, on the ingredients list of the package of the perfume, they do not write oak moss or tree moss. So I guess when it comes to oak moss, they're putting in some substitute for it. Otherwise, they would be listing the actual tree moss or oak moss extract. So I'm not so sure in which way oak moss plays a role in this fragrance, even though it is listed in the ingredients. If it's there, it's a wonderful fixative. However, it's not listed on the ingredients list. Was it a sneaky move? I don't know, because we just read the text on their website that states that they are very, very cautious about the laws in different countries where her perfumes are distributed, that she pays attention to these laws, and rules and regulations. So I don't know. I don't know to which capacity and in which capacity the oak moss is present in this perfume. However, on the website, they do list it as present in the base notes. Galbanum in the opening notes. Fascinating choice. Yes, it gives Chanel. It gives Chanel. Does it give a little bit of a green Chanel 19 moment? Hints of it. Just hints. Don't forget, this perfume was created in the 80s after all. I mean, number 19 was created in the 70s, but it was still echoing number 19. And this was years before the Eau de Parfum was released. Jacques Polge released the Eau de Parfum of Chanel number 19 in the 90s. So after number 1 Intense was released. It is a pungent, buttery smell in the opening and also later on. Well, buttery not in the opening. It's buttery now as it starts to dry down. But it is so multifaceted. You go through so many different stages of this perfume. The last being that tuberose, magical Houdini appearing and disappearing. But you do get the ylang ylang and the iris butter. And they create this dreamy, hazy, very hazy veneer of reality. They literally veneer you. They cocoon you. It's not a warm perfume. Don't misunderstand the cocooning as something, a hot cocoa in winter, you're cozy with your blanket. No, that's not what this is. This type of cocooning is psychological. It's not physical. It makes you feel like you can achieve anything, which is the same feeling I get when I smell Chanel number 5. It makes me feel like I can do anything and I can go anywhere. It makes me feel safe, sophisticated. Interesting that Guerlain did not hire Patricia de Nicolai as head perfumer for Guerlain again. Maybe because she's a woman, maybe because she's not the firstborn male, but instead is just a niece. But interesting that they did not hire her. And maybe, I always say everything happens for a reason. Maybe it all really happened for the best. Why am I saying this? Well, I'm saying this because Guerlain, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but her perfumes are much better than yours. Much better than yours. And we're talking light years better than yours. I've smelled several of her perfumes. Not all of them are for me. I'm not a big fan of ouds. She does her ouds masterfully, but even the more complicated ones, the ones that are based on incense, the ones that are based on patchouli, are incredible. Incredible. Only shade I might have to throw a little bit is for her bestseller at the moment, being New York. I was looking forward to smelling New York because everybody's raving about it, and then I smelled it, and I smelled Obsession by Calvin Klein. Now, I don't know if she worked on Obsession and then somebody stole her idea and maybe she is the nose behind Obsession. I don't know, but I don't think so because Obsession was released way before she started her company. But anyway, for women, not for men. New York smells of a very sophisticated version of Obsession. If Obsession were not watered down by Coty nowadays, it could smell of New York. So if you're looking for that old school Obsession, but with a more sophisticated French twist, try Patricia de Nicolai's New York. However, an original formulation, it is not. Or, you know what I mean? That's the only kind of shade I have to throw, which is not even shade. It's just my honest opinion, because New York, the second I smelled it, I was like, oh, this is Obsession's Amber. But anyway, back to number one, her first perfume, number one Intense. Also, what they do is they use real wax to stamp her logo into the bottles. So there is this gold thread running around the neck of the bottle, and then they stamp it, which is really bizarre because there's a sticker behind. You can see through the bottle the white dot. So there's, I guess, a sticker to keep the stamp, and then they put the wax stamp on top. So this is a wax stamp. I did kind of try to scratch it a little bit, but it's a very dry wax. It's not a soft wax, so it's not going to crack easily, but I still pay very much attention that I don't kind of bump into it because I don't want to crack the wax seal. And then you just take the stopper off, so they're not really connected. The wax, this battrouchage imitation, is just there as symbolically, but it is gorgeous. Now, it is available as a 30 ml, 100 ml, and 250 ml. Now, the 250 ml bottle, oh my God, what a doozy. It comes with this glass neck, and the golden thread is wrapped around the neck, so there's even extra attention to detail, and then the cap is kind of a little bit higher up. Does this warrant a big bottle? Hell yeah. Of course, you can't travel with a 250 ml, but you can have it at home, and I will be purchasing. I mean, I used up so much of it already. Now, a little goes a long way. It's so dreamy. I've tested it out in heat and in cold. Today, it's really cold. I've turned the heating off because I do have spotlights on me while I'm filming, and I don't want to have the heating on and overheat while I'm filming. I don't want to sweat while I'm filming. So right now, the tips of my fingers are kind of freezing. The tips of my toes are really cold. It's cold in here. And in the cold, this one develops magically. In the heat, and by heat, I mean I've also worn it where the heating was blasted at max, super high temperatures in the apartment or in the house, and I also loved it a lot. It develops differently in heat and in cold. In cold, it compacts itself. It shuts itself in this wonderful crystalline environment where whenever you smell it, it turns into like a crystal flower, an ambery sandalwoody, crystalline, buttery flower. It's so amazing. In heat, that compact crystalline is gone. The perfume starts vibrating more. It's less sharp. It becomes slightly more messy, but in the most tantalizing way, because that in the heat is when the tuberose starts slithering more often into your nose. You know, it's kind of like a molecule of it. It's kind of like in heat, the whole perfume vibrates more and becomes more messy, and that friction just pops out a molecule of tuberose, you know, of a tuberose indole that then kind of just flickers on. And if you kind of catch it, you're like, wow. And when it's more cold, it vibrates less. So it doesn't pop out those special molecules, those smells that you kind of catch usually. So it happens less often that you get surprised by that tuberose that hints its presence from time to time when the weather is really cold. But when it's hot, you cannot do anything but give up to the power of number one Intense. You just give yourself to it and you let it take you. You know, you just let it take you. Now in the cold, it's so awesome. I have my little fan here. Oh man, the buttery side of it, you know. I think the ilang ilang becomes more pronounced in cold. And this is interesting because I also like ilang ilang creams in cold weather more than in summer because they tend to be more greasy and fat. So obviously in summer you don't want to have so much grease on your face. But in winter, I do use an ilang ilang based cream, and it compacts itself. It has a similar smell to this in winter. It's like a buttery, compact smell of ilang ilang. While in summer, ilang ilang just kind of, the buttery aspect melts more. Oh man. Unfortunately, this perfume is not distributed worldwide. There are many places where you can find it, but you might have to order it. You know, it's not readily available. You can't just like go to any niche perfumery and find it readily available there to just kind of sniff and try out. So I understand that it's not easy to get this one. It might be a blind purchase for some because some might not have access to um, a perfumery in their local city that actually carries Patricia de Nicolai fragrances. Mind you, these are not the prettiest bottles. It's not like, also the packaging. Once you get into the detail and the structure of how everything is built, how the boxes are built, you realize, wait, hold on, this is really good bottle design and good packaging. But at first glance, the gold stopper could look a little bit tacky. It's not the best thing. These stickers, they put them by hand. They're not perfectly centered. The sticker is slightly off center. Like, when you first see it, you think to yourself, amateur. But boy, are you wrong. Because when you start smelling their stuff and you start getting into it and you start understanding all the handwork that goes into manufacturing the bottles, all these little extra details, you're like, oh, okay. And then you start appreciating everything. Everything. And then you notice that also this bottle, for example, it's not just a regular rectangular shaped bottle. No, because when you flip it downwards, you see it has this indentation inwards on the front, but the back is flat. But then the sides are concave. Well, this is concave and these are protruding. So there is design that went into this. This is not just like a random, let's get a random shaped perfume bottle and put a print on it. No, 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 no. Slight details that you notice with time, similar like with her fragrances. The more you wear them, the more they reveal their facets to you. And number one goes through time travel. It smells like the best of the 80s. When you smell number one Intense, it feels like you found the original 80s perfumes that we know and love, but with a twist. And what's the twist? Well, these perfumes have not been reformulated. I say I love my Giorgio Beverly Hills. I love Red. I love Elizabeth Taylor's Passion. I love Calvin Klein's Obsession. I love Eternity by Calvin Klein. All of these are 80s perfumes. But if you buy them today, they are mostly a shadow of themselves. They're missing that oomph. They're missing that chutzpah, And this one still has it. When you smell this one, there is no reminiscing of, the 80s. Oh man, it used to smell so much better. I wish this one would also smell. Sure, this one has also been reformulated. Back in the 80s, the original release was just called number one. Now it's number one Intense. It has been tweaked. But honey, it has not been watered down. Oh no. This is not watering down a perfume. This is the actual creator of the fragrance updating it to make it, the artist keeps perfecting it. It's been, if anything, it's been perfected, not watered down. Because this thing, you smell it and you're like, oh my God, I'm in the 80s. Let me throw away my iPad. I don't have a smartphone, but if you do, you feel like, let me throw away the smartphone. Let me throw away all this digital crap surrounding me Let me go outside, buy a Vogue magazine, sit down in a cafe. Yes, I'm going to say it here. Light a ciggy. Yeah, a cigarette. I know it's not a popular opinion these days, but 80s, you had to smoke in the 80s. You want to sit at a bar, in a cafe, douse yourself in this. Sip on your cappuccino or coffee, smoke a little cigarette while you're going through Vogue magazine and you're watching people passing by with their shoulder pads, with their gorgeous shoes, the colorways of the 80s. This is where you're at when you spray number 1 intense. The second you have it on, you're gone. It's a time machine. You are in the best of the 80s, in the best nostalgia trip the 80s could deliver. And to get all that in a perfume that's still manufactured today, and for that perfume, despite it being from the 80s, not being watered down and not being cheapened out on to maximize profits, that's a miracle in itself. That's already a miracle. Like, which other perfume from the 80s can we say is still delivering? Even Coco has been watered down. Chanel's Coco, and Chanel cares about their perfumes. Even Coco doesn't deliver the punch that it delivered in the 80s. This one delivers. Masterful. Hey, Vel. Vel's in the chats. Vel, I gave you a shout out at the beginning of the video. There she is, you guys. There she is. Go follow Vel. Vel gifted me this perfume. Go follow Vel on Instagram. Aldehyde overdose. Or aldehyde overdose, singular. Love DIY says, this one with a cigarette, yes. And I'm telling you, clubbing. To go clubbing with this perfume. So, I wore it for my premiere of my movie, Art Lovers Unite. With Vivienne Westwood. The movie premiered at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, coincidentally. I am in Melbourne right now filming. This is why the background is slightly different than what you're used to seeing, usually on my channel. At the premiere, I doused myself, literally. Oh, thank you so much for becoming a member, Tina. Thank you. I doused myself in number 1 intense. And Vel, you know, because you see, you know what a short period of time I have this, and already so much has been used up. So you know. And at the premiere, there was a lot of people. Now, nobody's smoking in a cinema, obviously. So we're in the cinema. I just wanted to have it. I wanted to be otherworldly 80s, you know. I'm dressed in Vivienne Westwood from head to toe. Vivienne was at her best in the 80s. She delivered. The entire new wave was really dressed by Vivienne Westwood at the end of the day. So I was dressed in a very 80s way. I even wore the Vivienne Westwood Roman 3-strap sandal to that event, which was born in the 80s. It's the epitome of an 80s shoe. Doused in this, my hair long, flowing. I perfumed the hair fully, which is the biggest transmitter of fragrance is hair. After the movie, we go to this little event, you know, some people go out to smoke, to come back in, you know, so some cigarette catches my outfit, my clothing, my hair, and the perfume just keeps blooming and blooming. And then that little bit of tobacco, that little bit of smoke added to it. Oh, let me tell you, it made me wish to be in a club in the 80s, where everybody was still allowed to smoke. I know it's bad for you. Don't get me wrong. This is just a nostalgic, olfactive experience. It just made me wish to be back there and covered in cigarette smoke with perfume, doused in a strong perfume like this one. Which coincidentally is what opium delivers, really. Really. I mean, what is opium by Yves Saint Laurent? The original formulation and the pure perfume. It's a clubbing perfume for disco. You wear it to the disco where everybody's smoking for the gods, honey. And you douse yourself in opium. Listen, nowadays, it hurts my heart to say, but even Christian Dior's Poison or Poison is watered down. The current formula of the actual EDT of Poison it's still better than a lot of perfumes out there, but it's a shadow of itself. In the 80s, boy, oh boy, did Poison deliver when it was released 1985/1986. Now it doesn't deliver that punch anymore. This still delivers. This is the 80s. So what I did the other day, I downloaded a couple of 80s movies. By the way, there's a lot of fabulous, not so well-known 80s movies on YouTube that people just uploaded. And they're still like available for view. So I downloaded a bunch of them on my iPad before I left for Australia. And I wanted them for my journey in case I didn't like the online entertainment on the airplane. But anyway, so I still had a bunch of them that I haven't seen. Like I downloaded, I don't know, 20 movies or something. And from YouTube, everything legal. So I watched them while I douse myself with this. Doused in number 1 intense while you're watching an 80s flick. It took me there. It took me. It really took me. And it made me want to smoke a cigarette, but I had none, so I didn't. But yeah. Man, if you get an opportunity, try this one out. Do not judge it by its opening notes because it is a little bit harsh in the opening. It does scream in the it hits you with its shoulder pads in the opening. It slaps you in the face in the opening. It's not very friendly in the opening. But don't let that fool you. All it's doing is it's setting the tone. It's sedimentating itself. It's shedding roots. It's preparing for those plants to grow and to blossom on your skin. That takes time. And give it time. And with time, it blooms, it develops, it envelops you, it gives you strength, it gives you courage even. It gives you courage. I was nervous to go to the premiere of my own movie, to see all the people I've never seen live before, you know? And this perfume helped me boost my own self-esteem and my own strength, and you know, it just makes you believe in yourself more and makes you just go for it and have fun and enjoy. And it's such a party perfume as well. It's a happy, joyous perfume. White florals, and this being the epitome of white florals, of an 80s white floral. White florals are happy, are fundamentally sunny fragrances. Even though the tuberose is a night flower, it still delivers happiness. You know, iris butter, happiness. Ylang ylang, total sunny vibes and happiness. Acacia also. Galbanum can be tricky, but it is happy. Sandalwood. You know, it's that moment of, want to come in closer? That's the sandalwood. The oak moss, it's the fixative. It's going to make this perfume stay fresh for years and years to come. I don't think this is going to last years and years because I'm going to use it up sooner than that. But everything is just perfection. I think Patricia de Nicolai, girl, milady, madame, after all is said and done, you're lucky that Guerlain did not take you, because you would have been forced to do what they want you to do, to create their perfumes with their structures. By becoming your own person and starting your own company, you became free. Sure, the trials and tribulations might have been tougher. It might have taken you more time. As the website says, and throws shade at male perfumers, especially when Patricia was starting to create her company. Perfumery was a very male-dominated world. So for her to prove herself probably was really not easy. Which maybe contributed also to the fact of how she dressed. Always with a white laboratory robe. I guess maybe also psychologically to be taken seriously. Always with short hair. You know, the photos we see of Patricia, she doesn't have the long, lavish, she's not a femme fatale creating perfumes. Oh no, she's a scientist. creating perfumes. Her whole demeanor, her whole form of dressing, very subdued and minimal, very French chic, but she always had the short hair, always the white lab coat on, always, you could see, this is just my interpretation, Patricia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see from the way you dress and the way that you photograph on photos, or the photos of the younger you in particular that are posted on your website, is you being a scientist. And you want to be taken seriously. So there's no lavish lifestyle. There is no flamboyant lipstick, heavy eye makeup, which was typical for the 80s. None of that. None of that. Patricia wears short hair, white lab coat, minimal to no makeup on her face. And she's usually photographed sitting at tables, writing down notes, sniffing on perfume cards, balancing all the chemical compositions of the fragrances. She is portraying herself like someone who wants to be taken very seriously. Very seriously. So much so that in the first perfume shop, and I think the second one also she opened, in which she composes in her perfumes and works in, I don't know if she still does this now, but on the website, on the Nicolai website, I read that the first main perfumery that they opened up, the laboratories were in the perfumery, behind a glass wall, and you as the customer, while you're coming in to buy perfumes, you could look through that glass wall or whatever separated you from the working environment, and you could see Patricia at work while she's working in the laboratory. That's amazing. That's one extra step to push forward that notion and concept of take me seriously. Take me seriously. I'm showing you everything I'm doing. I am serious. I'm the real deal. I can only imagine what she had to go through having such a burden on your back in the family, such as Guerlain. None other than Guerlain fragrances. That's a big name to live up to, especially if they don't hire you. Now, we don't know the full story there, but you're starting on your own, trying to find funding for your business. Your family isn't really helping, allegedly. You got something to prove, and you're on a mission, and that might take you a whole lifetime, and you might not ever manage to prove yourself. And yet here we are. She managed. Oh boy, did she manage. Many, many shops all over Paris, several shops in France, 1 or 2 boutiques in London, distribution worldwide in some niche perfumery shops. And in Paris, if you want to order Nicolai fragrances, their website offers you a shipment in an hour or two. Like they have a courier delivering it by bicycle or by motorbike. But if you buy it on phone, pay via credit card, they're going to deliver the perfume to your house. Like they have, like, just in case you need your fix of Nicolai. And Vel, you have hooked me to Nicolai. I'm hooked for life. So am I going to need my fix of Nicolai pretty soon? Yes, actually right now. Let me just re-spritz it again. Oh my God. It's everything, you guys. The roses. It's so pure. 87.8 or 87.9% natural ingredients in this one, as stated on their website. I cannot tell you how much I love this perfume. Vel, you have captivated my heart because I met you live and we got to talk together, and you're my baby now forever. But also this perfume has captivated my heart, and now it's even more special to me because it's connected to you. So I will never be able to smell this perfume again without thinking of you, obviously. But also knowing that you love it so much. We share this passion together, which is such a strong bonding moment, you guys. When you share a perfume you love, It's special. Maybe Gen Z would say that moment is when you both play the same video game you love so much, and then you team up and you win all the levels. Well, for old school vampires like me, a bonding moment is when you meet someone who loves a perfume just as much as you do, and you love the same perfume. Let me tell you, that's a moment. That's a moment. Vel says, thank you for reviewing number 1 Intense and talking about the amazing Patricia de Nicolai. I'm so happy you adore this fragrance as much as I do. And I adore Patricia as well, because I got to discover more about her, to read up about her, to learn about Patricia de Nicolai, about her family, also about her struggles and tribulations, making it in the French, snobby French world, whether it be perfumery, patisserie, fashion, you name it. It's not easy, especially if you're a woman. But she made it. Just like that tuberose flower that appears and disappears, and you can't really know from where it comes, she did the same. She's present like a silent colossus in the fashion world. Because, let me tell you, her perfumes are colossal. Not necessarily in terms of projection and bestiality in terms of smell. No, in terms of quality, conceptuality, the poetry behind them. They are colossal. And yet she doesn't scream. She's that tuberose flower that she's always there, constantly there, but you have to find her. She's not just going to scream in your face, hey, I'm here, I'm here. No, you, very elegant lady. Very elegant lady. Very elegant. What can I say? We do have a master perfumer in this world, and that is Patricia de Nicolai. My humble opinion, for whatever it's worth, you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, reviewing this beautiful gem. Val, this moves me to tears because, you know, here I go. I thought I was not going to cry, but here I go. I'm a very emotional person. I'm a Cancer. I'm built very close to water. So when you smell something like this that moves you so much, it's one of those moments, and we don't have many in this lifetime. It's one of those moments that makes you feel happy to be alive. It's a little thing. Like, I know it's a little thing, you guys. It's like, whatever, the day goes on, right? There's a lot of things to do. There's taxes to be paid. There's bills to be paid. There's problems to solve. There's haters on the internet. You have to wake up and go to work. Like, there's so much to hate about life. But then from time to time, there's something little like this that comes by, and you just go like, you know what? It's all worthwhile. It's all worthwhile. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time, never give up on love and subscribe.